Agnes woke to footprints on her roof. Elias heard hooves echoing inside the locked church. The dogs fled screaming into the night. Whatever crossed those 100 miles wasn't a creature. It was the devil himself, dragging hell behind every step. The winter of 1855 hit Devon like a curse. Snow covered the ground for days, thick and unyielding, silencing the villages like a blanket over a corpse. But this isn't a story about snowstorms. It's about what followed. On the morning of February 9th, after a bitterly cold night, villagers opened their doors and found something unnatural waiting for them in the snow. That was the first time Elias Thorne, a quiet village pastor, saw the footprints. Deep, narrow, and in single file, like something had hopped across the frozen earth, on one leg. They led straight to his front door, paused, and then wandered off toward the church. Elias crossed himself, but deep down, he knew prayer wouldn't stop whatever this was. Not far away, Agnes Holloway, an elderly widow known for her strange dreams, stood barefoot in her garden, staring at the same prints. She whispered, "He came last night," as if she'd seen it before. Maybe she had. And maybe this time, he'd come for her. By midday, the entire village was talking about the same thing. The prints weren't just in Elias's garden or Agnes's yard, they were everywhere. Across more than 30 towns and hamlets, from Topsham to Teignmouth, people reported the same eerie trail, hoof-like marks, in a perfect single file, stretching for miles. Some said they looked like a donkey's hooves, but no animal walks on one leg. And these didn't follow roads. They climbed walls, slid over rooftops, crossed rivers. In some cases, the tracks stopped at doors, circled homes, then continued on. It was like something had been checking. Villagers whispered that it wasn't trying to get in, it was choosing. Selecting. Agnes lit candles in every room. Elias fasted and prayed. But it was Thomas Vale, the young blacksmith's apprentice, who followed the trail into the woods. He returned pale, trembling, and said nothing, just pointed back toward the forest and muttered, "It walks like it knows where it's going." Panic spreads faster than footprints. By the third night, the air in Devon was thick with fear. The prints had now crossed rivers, climbed into attics, and in one case, they passed through a hay bale without disturbing it. That's when the villagers decided it was time to act. A group of men, farmers, hunters, even the baker, armed themselves with rifles and torches. They brought hounds too, the kind used to flush out foxes. Whatever had left those tracks, they were ready to face it. They followed the trail deep into the woods. At first, the dogs led confidently. Then, just past a dense thicket near Agnes's property, the animals froze. Moments later, they turned and ran. Howling. Shaking. Refusing to return. These were trained hunting dogs, not the type to scare easily. Elias later said he heard something that night. A sound he'd only heard once before, during a funeral. It wasn't a growl or howl. It was hoofbeats, on wood. Inside his house. When fear becomes too loud, people reach for logic, even the kind that doesn't make sense. In the days that followed, Devon buzzed with theories. One said the prints came from an escaped kangaroo. That idea came from Reverend Musgrave, who calmly told his congregation that a local menagerie had lost a creature. The truth? No kangaroo escaped. He made it up. Just to calm people down. Then came the naturalists. One biologist blamed badgers, claiming the cold forced them to hop in strange patterns. Another said it was a large seabird, gliding from rooftop to rooftop and dragging its feet. Someone else blamed a toad. Yes, a toad. As if a toad crossed 100 miles in one night and tried knocking on front doors. People wanted answers. But nothing fit. The tracks weren't random. They were deliberate, clean, perfectly measured. Whatever made them knew where it was going. And worse, it didn't care that it was being watched. When mystery lingers too long, people look for culprits. Some whispered it was a hoax, a twisted prank by Puritan fanatics hoping to scare the sinners back into church. Others blamed Romani travelers, saying a tribe on custom-built stilts had created the trail to ward off rival groups. One author even claimed that 400 men, coordinated across villages, laid the footprints using stepladders. Sound impressive? Sure. But you try climbing rooftops on stilts in the dead of winter without waking a soul. There was also the tale of an escaped military balloon, dragging weighted ropes that left marks as it bounced across rooftops. The only problem? No broken windows. No wreckage. Just clean, deliberate tracks, stretching for miles. If this was a prank, it was perfect. Too perfect. And if it wasn't, then the alternative is far worse, that something really was out there that night, and it left no trace except fear. Days passed, but the hoofprints never stopped. Some mornings, villagers found them circling their homes again. Others claimed to hear footsteps above their ceilings in the middle of the night. Elias stopped preaching. He boarded the church windows and refused to speak to anyone. Agnes vanished for 2 full days, and when she returned, her hands were blackened with soot and her eyes didn't blink for minutes at a time. Rumors bled into rituals. People began marking their doors with coal crosses, pouring salt at thresholds. But the marks didn't help. The tracks still appeared, now inside locked homes, around cribs, behind curtains. One child woke screaming, claiming something was standing over him, whispering in a language he couldn't describe. The villagers had started hoping the devil really was behind it, because the idea of something worse, something nameless, was more than they could bear. And yet, they hadn't even seen its face. It started with whispers. At first, just vague murmurs in the distance, behind walls, under beds, in the chimneys. But by the 7th night, the voices were clearer. Some heard prayers. Others heard laughter. Thomas claimed he saw someone watching him from inside the forge's fire. When he looked again, the face was gone, but the iron in his hand had melted. Children refused to sleep. Elders stopped speaking altogether. Even the dogs refused to bark. Something had infected the village, not with sickness, but with silence. Doors creaked at night without wind. Windows cracked from inside. One man was found standing barefoot in the snow, eyes rolled back, repeating the same word, chosen. Agnes began drawing symbols on the walls of her home, eyes fixed, hands trembling. Elias buried his Bible beneath the church floor. Not out of shame, but fear it might attract something. And still, no one had seen the creature. But now, it was beginning to see them. The footprints stopped appearing. For the first time in over a week, the snow lay untouched. But no one celebrated. Because the silence now was different. Heavier. Waiting. That night, the village changed. Lights flickered in perfect unison. Clocks stopped at 3:33 a.m. One house collapsed inward without a sound. In the woods, trees cracked open like ribs, hollow and steaming. Thomas disappeared for hours, and when he returned, he had carvings on his arms, not made by any blade. Agnes's home was found upside down. Everything inside was inverted, chairs on ceilings, candles burning beneath floorboards. Elias tried to ring the church bell, but it shattered before he could touch it. Something had stopped walking because it no longer needed to. It had arrived. The entity wasn't outside anymore. It was in the walls, in their heads, in the cracks of their sanity. And it wasn't choosing anyone now. It was taking everything. The snow eventually covered it all. The broken homes. The hoofprints. The faces no one found again. And just like that, Devon went quiet, not healed, not free, just quiet. The kind of silence that listens. The kind that waits. For weeks, newspapers tried to explain it. Scientists spoke of badgers, birds, and melting snow. Priests whispered about demons and punishment. And villagers? They just stopped talking. But none of it made sense, not really. No creature walks in a perfect line for over 100 miles, up walls, through rivers, and across rooftops. No animal melts snow with each step. No shadow chooses who goes mad and who disappears. So what really happened in Devon? Was it mass hysteria? A cruel hoax? Or something older, something that slipped through for just 1 week, when the world was cold enough to let it in? Maybe it wasn't the devil. Maybe it was something worse. Something forgotten. Something that walked in silence, not to scare, but to mark. And maybe it never left. So tell me, what do you think those villagers saw? Why did it stop at Elias's church? Why did Agnes draw those symbols? And why did the children say it whispered to them, from the ceiling? Let me know your theory in the comments. Because stories like this, they don't end. They just sleep. Waiting for snow. Waiting for someone to listen again. What if those footprints appeared at your door tonight? Like, comment and subscribe, before it's too late.